Chichi for that story. And of course, we have the Member of Parliament for Kiharu constituency, Ndindi Nyoro, who is also the chair of the Budget and Allocation Committee. Mheshimiwa, welcome to this live broadcast. This story was talking about Kenyans living on $1 a day as an economist. What do you think about this?
Thank you very much, Hibak, for this chance to come and interact with Kenyans on your platform. The story about Kenyans living at $1 a day is an issue of distribution. You know, the economy has two facets.
Right.
One, you look at baking the cake, but also number two, you look at how you share the cake.
Okay.
So an economy most likely is championed to grow in a manner that whatever you are able to generate is also shared in a manner that leaves all Kenyans and all the citizens of that country, for that matter, at a better state. Right. So in the current dispensation, economically speaking, and let me first talk about globally.
Right.
As technology grows, what usually happens is that inequalities also grow.
Right.
Because as technology grows, what happens is that productivity per worker grows, but then whatever would have been done by more people is done by less people.
Right.
And therefore you can get resources concentrated in a few hands, and the more the reason we make a budget like the one we'll be exemplifying today to show what we are doing to correct some of the inequalities, so that as we do the policies, as we grow the economy, we do that in an egalitarian manner. Egalitarian manner that leaves people and across all the board in a manner that is better than before.
Right, Mheshimiwa, and thank God we of course have the projections here as we go through the budget that is going to be read tomorrow. The revenues that are going to be shared across the country in different sectors. If we look at the total expenditure, which is the total budget, it's going to be around 3.9 trillion, which is 21.8% of the gross domestic product, as the recurrent expenditure stands at 2.7 trillion and the development expenditure at 687.9 billion shillings, which is 3.8% of the gross domestic product. Will stand there, Mheshimiwa, for a minute. 3.9 trillion down from 4.1 or 4.2 trillion. What led to that reduction?
One, Hibak, with all due respect, and I'm happy to serve Kenyans as the budget and appropriation chairperson, and one of the roles that I have is to give Kenyans the correct information. Unfortunately, the data I'm seeing on the screen, all the data is not correct. All right,
so what exactly is the total expenditure?
The budget that will be not reading, the highlights really.
Right.
You know, first of all, before I come to the figures, because I saw the previous story.
Right.
The reason why previously we could all go to our radios to listen to the budget is because the actual budget was being read like the day tomorrow.
Right.
However, after the new constitution, what is done in Parliament is ceremonial.
Right.
It is ceremonial because the CS Treasury only highlights some of the critical areas in regards to the expectations of Kenyans. So after 2010, the role of budget making now is a prerogative of Parliament.
Of course.
And of course it's done in a consultation with the executive through the National Treasury. However, the entire process and figures are the ones that are contained in the appropriations bill, which becomes an act. As we talk even tomorrow, even tomorrow when the highlights are being done, the processes of Parliament and making of the budget is not yet complete. It will be complete next week after Parliament passes the appropriations bill, and therefore afterwards the President assents and it becomes an act. So tomorrow are highlights. And are highlights because nothing much is likely to change.
Mheshimiwa, just a minute. This data is, of course, from the Treasury. It is a highlight of the predictions of course, the budget. Are you saying that those figures are not going to be what we see tomorrow?
No, the figures, as I saw them, are referring to a different budget. There is a budget for financial year 2023-2024, and there is a budget for the year 2024-2025.
Right.
What is now the topic? I am, and generally, so maybe that the reason you invited me here is because of the budget of the year 2024-2025.
Of course.
In expectation of tomorrow.
Of course.
Tomorrow's budget, or the budget for the year 2024-2025, is a budget of 4.006 trillion.
Right, which is more or less close to 3.9. The predictions, of course, are you saying that Treasury and Parliament have different figures?
No.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the data you relied on is the data for the previous financial year.
Right.
And the budget that we'll be expecting tomorrow, the highlights tomorrow, and the budget that you have considered and passed even that reading,
right,
is a budget of 4.006 trillion.
Right.
However, that is likely to change marginally.
Right.
Marginally because in the Appropriations Act or in the Appropriations Bill, we are likely to amend that slightly by around 14 billion Kenya shillings.
Right.
But as it is now, it's 4.06. And just to also point on the other figures, the figure that is highlighted as recurrent is also not correct.
All right.
The amount of money that will be going into recurrent expenditure in the next financial year is around 1.6 trillion Kenya shillings.
Right.
And this is recurrent for national government.
Right.
The monies that will be going into development is around 450 approximately billion Kenya shillings. Those are two critical areas.
Right.
But the highest figure, and I suppose that is the figure you also added, which is also could pass as recurrent, but is not.
Which is recurrent as well.
But is not budgeted as recurrent, is a figure we call Consolidated Fund Service, CFS. And this money goes into the payment of interest rates.
Which is still a recurrent expenditure, Mheshimiwa? Is it or is it not a recurrent expenditure, Mheshimiwa?
The reason it is called CFS is because it should be treated as CFS.
But it is still within the recurrent expenditure, right?
Hibak, what happens is this. You know, we may
not are
change.
You trying to manage the numbers so that Kenyans have more hope, perhaps? There
is no management of numbers. It's an issue of, you know, there are canons of budget making.
Right.
And I can't change them because I have appeared here.
Right.
There is